Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into the absolute essentials of moving and loading data across Google Cloud. If you're building out cloud architecture, you know it's absolutely crucial to understand exactly how data flows into, out of, and between all these different systems. It's not just about knowing the tools exist, right? It's about knowing the specific rules, the little command line shortcuts, and honestly, the hidden traps that come with each one. So let's get into it. We've broken this explainer down into 4 main stages of the data journey. We'll start by conquering cloud storage, then navigating cloud databases, moving on to big data and analytics tools, and finally, decoupling systems with PubSub. Okay, let's kick things off with a real-world scenario from our source material. Imagine you're tasked with migrating massive files to the cloud. You really want to avoid writing custom scripts for this. So what exactly can you just handle right there in the Cloud Console? Well, good news. The Cloud Console is actually super capable here. It easily handles uploading both files and entire folders directly. But wait, there is a catch. Don't fall into the trap of looking for a diff comparison command in the UI. If you want to compare local files against what's already in your bucket, the console is not going to help you. You've got to rely on other tools for that specific job. And that brings us to Section 1, Conquering Cloud Storage. Now, take a look at the fundamental difference between the general G-Cloud tool and GSUtil. While G-Cloud is your everyday go-to for general Google Cloud resources, GSUtil is basically the dedicated heavyweight champion built specifically for cloud storage. It's totally optimized for shuffling data around your buckets and VMs. You really want to memorize these syntax shorthands. For instance, you don't type out create bucket. You just drop an MB for make bucket. Copying files, that's just a quick CP. And when you need to change access control as permissions, you hit it with the ACLCH command, followed by the -U flag for the user. It is all about speed here. Moving right along to Section 2, Navigating Cloud Databases. Here's a classic, tricky scenario for you. A database admin needs an export from Cloud SQL, but they want to load it elsewhere with the absolute minimum amount of work. Specifically, they do not want to manually define a schema in the target database first. So, what export format is your best friend here? You absolutely want the SQL format. Why? Because unlike CSV files where you're forced to manually map out all the columns, SQL exports actually bring their own blueprints. They contain the data definition commands right in the file, so it builds the structure for you automatically. Talk about a massive time saver. And here is the exact command line structure you'll use. It flows incredibly logically. You start with the service and operation, which is gcloud SQL export SQL. Then you name your source instance. Next comes your destination, an actual cloud storage bucket path starting with gs/. And finally, you tack on the database flag to specify the exact database you're grabbing. Now, if we switch gears to Cloud Spanner, you really need to watch out for hidden costs. Spanner relies on the Dataflow service to move its data around during exports. This is a big deal because it means you are literally going to see extra Dataflow charges show up on your bill, especially if you're moving data across regions. Keep an eye on that. Then there's Cloud Bigtable. Unlike the other databases that let you use simple command line flags, Bigtable makes you put in a little more elbow grease. To export data here, you actually need to run a compiled Java program specifically designed for it. There's no magical export button you can just click. To round out the database side of things, let's look at Cloud Firestore. The main thing to remember is that your export scope changes completely depending on how it's configured. In native mode, exports happen at the database level, but if you're running it in data store mode, those operations happen at the namespace level. Okay, time to scale things up massively with Section 3, Big Data and Analytics Tools. You'll want a mental cheat sheet for BigQuery formats. For exporting data out, you've got CSV, JSON, and Avro. But listen closely, XML is never an option there. Now for bringing data in, you can use CSV, Parquet, and Avro. And the big trap to avoid? YAML. YAML is strictly for configuration. You absolutely cannot use it to import actual datasets. When you're dealing with massive datasets, compression is literally a lifesaver. You just need to remember these pairings. Using Avro, your options are Deflate and Snappy. Sticking with CSV, you're limited to gzip or just no compression at all. Imagine you've got a massive new data set and you need it in BigQuery yesterday. You're going to use the BQ load command. But the real magic trick here is the auto-detect flag. Instead of painstakingly mapping out the structure yourself, auto-detect just figures out the file schema for you on the fly. You follow that up with your format, your dataset and table, and the file path, boom, done. Now, here is a major gotcha with Cloud Dataproc. You might think running an export on a Dataproc list gives you all your process data, right? Wrong. That is a massive trap. Exporting from Dataproc literally only gives you the cluster's configuration settings. You are not getting any actual Hadoop tables or Spark data frames out of that command. Let's head into our final section. Section 4, Decoupling Systems with PubSub. The entire philosophy of a message queue is decoupling. Think of PubSub as a giant shock absorber for your architecture. If there's a sudden, massive spike in data and one of your processing services starts to lag, it doesn't crash the whole system. The work just piled up safely in the queue, letting the generating service keep doing its thing without waiting around. The commands here flow exactly like the data itself. First, you create the destination with gcloud pub subtopics create. Next, you set up the receiver using gcloud pub subscriptions create and link it to that topic. Finally, when you're ready to read a message and tell the system, hey, I got this, don't send it again, you use gcloud pub subscriptions pull with the absolutely crucial AutoAC flag. Let's test how these systems actually integrate. Say your data scientists want to build machine learning models using data currently sitting in Bigtable. But as we know, Bigtable is just a database. It doesn't do machine learning. So what service from our tool belt actually bridges that gap? The missing piece of the puzzle is Dataproc. By connecting Dataproc, you bring in the raw power of Apache Spark, which has native libraries specifically built for machine learning. You just extract your data from Bigtable, feed it into Dataproc, and let it do all the heavy lifting. We have covered a ton of ground today, from GSUtil shortcuts and schemaless SQL exports to BigQuery auto-detect and the amazing decoupling power of PubSub. You know the rules and the hidden traps. So the real question is, now that you know exactly how these pieces fit together, how are you going to architect them into your next resilient, automated data pipeline? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.